liveliness and viability of the town. The agenda we've got tonight has been circulated to members of the working group. So the membership of the working group is 5 councillors and 4 co-optees. So the councillors are myself, Colin Wiles, Dean Marie, Paul Graham, Mark Morehouse, who's here, and Fox, who's here. And then the co-optees are Tony Broom from Shepherd Neame Bell Hotel, Jane Gill from Priory Interiors, who's represented tonight by Claire from Pipesh, Carol George from the town team, and Steve Laslett from Summit Events, who's going to be talking about the events later on. So the agenda we've got for tonight is, first of all, apologies for absence, minutes of the last meeting, final letter that was sent to consultees. I think some of you have had that letter already. Tony Broom's going to talk about the view of hospitality, Shepherd Neame generally. Steve Laslett's going to talk about sandwich events and how they fit in with the tourism offer in the town. The Compass map project, Claire is going to talk about, and I think she's got copies of the map that's been published, or going to be published. And then we're just got an item on the agenda, telephone boxes, signage and heritage wars, the tree trail, which I can talk about, and then any other business. But we've also got Chris Townend here from DDC, who's going to talk, if requested, talk about DDC, White Cliffs and the wider tourism situation across the district. And has also got lots of information here. We've also got Councillor Claire Ungerson here, who's Chair of the Heritage and Townscape Committee.
I was just going to ask a procedural question. When people give their presentations, because there are lots of people here, will you be inviting Q&A? Because I think... Yeah, we were,
time permitting, I mean, we'll try and finish by 7 o'clock. So if you can keep presentations brief and succinct, and then have brief questions and answers, and finish by 7, if that's okay. Just a procedural issue. Christina Glynn is going to be filming this meeting, because this is a public meeting. So if you don't want to be in the film, then keep out of the firing line of the camera, if that's okay.
I think I'm really just going to be aiming down this end.
Okay, fine.
You'd be safe.
Shall we just do brief introductions? Just go around the room. It might help everyone to know who's here.
Steve Laslett, Chair of Sandwich Community Events Association. I do need to leave at 6:20. I'm going to watch Mark. Would you tell me when 6:20 comes, please? Thanks very much. So sorry for what would be an abrupt departure.
David Budge, here as a member.
Chris Gay, I'm one of the committee on the Sandwich Local History Society and a one-time archivist when the archives were open.
Carol George, I'm Secretary to Sandwich Town Team and I chair Sandwich in Bloom.
I'm John Battergill, Sandwich Car Gallery, Town Team and Sandwich in Bloom.
Yep.
I'm Laurie, this is Paul. We operate the River Runner just opposite here at the Bell.
Paul Carter, Town Councillor, also on the History Society and Sandwich Society as well.
Danielle Carter, Sandwich Town Council.
Claire Bennett, I run Pipesh in Sandwich the shop.
Anne Gorham, I run Balloons R Us, Cardiff Green Shop. I'm Sharon Mundy, I work at the Sandwich Stations. I'm Lynn Ripley and I just live here.
And I'm Robin, I'm her husband.
And I'm Christina Glynn, I'm a resident, I film council meetings.
I'm Claire Ungerson, I'm a councillor, I'm Chair of Heritage and Townscape, to which this working group reports initially, and I'm also a trustee of the revived Phoenix Centre, which is now known as the Jubilee Centre, which hopefully will be reopening in February. It's already being used by the Sandwich Boxing Club.
Mark Morehouse, Sandwich Town Councillor and Sandwich Society.
Tony Broom, I'm a regional ops manager for Shepherd Neame and have had responsibility for the Bell Hotel since we purchased it.
Chris Townend, I'm the Head of Investment Growth and Tourism for Dover District Council in a tourism brand sense. That's Visit Whitecliff's Country.
I'm Anne Fox, Sandwich Town Councillor. I'm on Sandwich and Blue and Treasurer of the Sandwich Pantry.
I'm Vicky Tomlins, newly co-opted councillor to the Town Council.
Thank you. And it's great to see so many councillors here, but also such a good turnout. I think it shows how important people feel tourism is for the town, visitors generally. So thanks for coming. Hopefully you'll find this meeting informative and productive. So the first item after that is minutes of the last meeting, which have been circulated to the working group members. Are there any matters arising from those minutes? If I just briefly run through them. So the primary purpose of this working group is to look at tourist information in the town, not just information issued by the town council, but the wider tourism office. We've got terms of reference for working groups which have been noted and agreed previously. It was noted at the last meeting that visitor numbers are down over what they were 3-4 years ago, obviously because of the pandemic, possibly some of that because of the way tourism, the tourist centre is structured at the moment. We don't fully understand that. Then there was an item about the quay and the quay green toilets and how the public conveniences are used. And then finally on the minutes, it was agreed that we should draft a letter to go out to businesses and various groups and individuals, which I've been sending out over the last couple of days, and I've done about 100 so far. And I think some of you have already responded to that, so that's been really helpful. Are there any matters arising from those minutes?
Sorry, Steve, did we actually get any other updated figures on the visitor numbers?
I haven't had anything back yet, no.
Okay.
I will chase that.
And a couple of the other things you were going to action for.
The other thing was about the Heritage Lottery Fund.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've emailed the museum coordinator about that. Not yet had a reply. There is a query about. You remember the old tourist office was in the front of the Guildhall, where the courtroom is, and there is a query about whether any kind of legal commitment has been made to the Heritage Lottery Fund about using that space as a extension of the museum.
Exhibition space.
Exhibition space.
And also the fact that the Guildhall Future Fund that you could be having filming in the courtroom and weddings which raise income for the town, for the Guildhall, which is expensive to run.
So there was a discussion about that at the last meeting about whether, I think there's a general consensus that the Visitor Information Centre where it is at the moment is a bit tucked away and not as visible. And
I thought there was also quite a consensus that pushing it back there wasn't a particularly good idea and that we should be looking to pop up somewhere else.
Possibly. So two things have happened since the old tourist office was moved into the Guildhall, into the reception area. One is that there's also now a lot of weddings, so obviously if you've got weddings going on you can't have the tourist office open at the same time, but also they've gone and put a bus stop up right outside those double doors, so there are often buses parked there, blocking the sight line, if you like. But on the other hand, the waiting room was open, so that bit of Sandwich is now much busier, and having the tourist office there might make sense. But then another option might be to go into a retail unit somewhere in the town. So for example, the sandwich shop or the age concern shop.
I'm not sure why that's in the minutes. That kind of suggests it might be available, which it isn't.
It was discussed.
Was it?
Yes.
After I left, perhaps. What I did like about that meeting was the idea of pop-up emerging, because I don't think we've really explored it before, and the minutes can't do justice to a new idea like that, and it wasn't fully explored. And what do we mean by pop-up? Yeah. And could it be a gazebo that's in different places, or is it a retail centre? Yeah. Is it a hut like it is at Broadstairs? It's a new idea, it's an interesting idea, and it was floated for the first time at the last working group, and I'm sure it's got a long way to run before we can really understand what we perhaps mean by a pop-up. But I like the idea.
Yeah, so that is another option. There's the retail units. For example, there's that shop on the corner of King Street and Market Street next to Finn's, which is empty. We're trying to find out who owns it. Seems a bit of a mystery at the moment. But a pop-up, other people are saying, do we really need a visitor centre? Because nowadays everyone's on apps or online, and they don't go into a physical space. They do everything on their phone as and when they're in the town. So
is this an agenda item currently being discussed, or are you just chatting about it?
it's just the matters arising from the minutes, but we can put it on this agenda.
It needs to be properly discussed.
Yeah, it does.
As do the toilets, the public toilets, needs to be on the agenda, please. Thank you.
So what's happened is this letter has gone out. We're seeking views. This is the kind of evidence gathering stage, if you like, and seeking views from businesses and from organisations and individuals. I've had feedback already from the Sandwich Society, from people like Rob, from River Runner, and a couple of other businesses. So what I'll do is collate all of those responses, and at that point we'll see what the kind of view is, or the consensus about where the visitor centre should go. Should it stay where it is? Should it go in the old office? Should we think about another option? But we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Well, why next meeting?
Or we can discuss it today under
it's
any
nearly spring.
We can discuss it today under any other business.
Colin, I just think you have to be careful of taking a consensus of people that don't have the full facts and think, oh, it'd be wonderful to be back in the old thing, but they don't know about the weddings, they don't know about this. That's not evidence, that's just what people believe. It's not necessarily based in anything sensible.
Just to add, in terms of evidence and data, if I can support, I can help. So we do visitor surveys, so that's what we did for Sandwich. We interviewed 450 odd people. 11% visited the Visitor Information Centre, and it performed really well on ease of finding it, quality of service and info received. So out of 5 it was ranged between 4.86 and 4.9. We're just about to start doing another survey for this year, because we do them every so years, but we can share that data. So the point of being here is to, where I can help, I can share what we have. And also we have a pop-up we tested with the Dover Greeters on Dover seafront, so working with the cruise industry, so I could equally, if there are people who'd like to meet with them, see how the pop-up worked. It's like a beach hut they put on the seafront, which could potentially work on the quay. So if there's ways I can help, which is why I'm happy, I'll stop talking, because I'm happy to be a silent person to learn and see what I can help. But
if you could
if there are certain things,
if you could send that survey through, that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's a big survey.
How was that carried out?
Interviews, working with the VIC and working with people on the street. So we will do another. We did visit Kent in a number of times.
So you were stopping people on the street?
Yeah, and
I'm really sorry. It's a struggle to hear down.
Sorry,
and also I can't work out when you said you did that survey.
That was 2019 or 2020, and we're conducting another one this year. So we're just sorting out the questions now. But I can share with you, and I'm happy to share the link of the PDF, so you can all see what people look for and their thoughts, their challenges, and what they liked about Sandwich, which is really positive report. Sandwich performs well.
Without hijacking this meeting on it, what's the brief feedback on the pop-up that Dover tried? Was it positive or mixed?
It's what I have been told. It's worked well. So it was connected to the Port of Dover creating a new pier. So it's around the Marina Curve. So they were running a number of events, and obviously cruise passengers come around that way. But it was something we've worked with them for quite a time, and we work with the town council who helped fund it. But it seems to be well received.
We could learn from it, you think?
Yeah, and obviously I've got the main VIC, the district one is based at Dover Museum, which is a team of people who work for me, which equally I can bring Lucy to another meeting who runs it for me.
So I mentioned at the last meeting that the Broadstairs kiosk is a kiosk literally next to the Albion Hotel on the seafront, on the promenade, and it's run entirely by volunteers with a paid coordinator who coordinates the volunteers. So we had a discussion about whether there's an appetite within Sandwich for volunteers to do half a day a week or a month within that, and that's again something we need to explore. So these things haven't been predetermined. You know, there's lots of options on the table.
I'm always interested in costs. If you could include any data you have on the costs of doing a pop-up.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, the capital cost of it, the building or the tent or whatever it is, plus the cost of running it.
Okay, should we move on? So that's the minutes, broadly speaking, what was discussed at the last meeting. The next item on the agenda is final letter sent to consultees. Again, I've attached that to working group members. What this was is a letter that's gone out to various businesses, groups, individuals within Sandwich, asking for comments about, is the visitor centre where it is it in the best place, should it be moved, any comments about wider tourism issues and so on. And I'm starting to get lots of responses to that. For example, yesterday I spoke to Alan Smith, who's the leisure park owner, who's got some very strong views about tourism in Sandwich. So I'm going to go and see him. What I'll try, I think for the working group, do you want me to send on all those responses generally, or do you want me to kind of collate them and put them into some kind of report?
It's probably best to collate them, isn't it? So they'll all come out once you've done them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to send them on directly, but
well, they need to
there's
be
a lot of reading to do. So it's probably easier if I edit them into a manageable format.
You said you wanted everything by the end of this month.
By the end of January, yes.
So it would be ready for the next meeting?
Yeah. Well, depending when the next meeting is, yes.
Can I ask, Mr. Chairman, was that just in the distribution in Sandwich North or Sandwich South Ward?
Well, it's the whole of Sandwich, but the businesses are all in.
Was it just to the businesses?
I've got a long list here which has been circulated. I can send it on to you to working group members. So it's all of the businesses, hotels, hospitality, pubs, etc. It's groups like the Sandwich Society, the Local History Society, the Town Team, DDC, the churches, St Peter's, St Mary's and St Clement's, the Medieval Centre, Sandwich Events, the Arts Society, the Tree Warden, and so on and so on. So
you also put it on Facebook, didn't you?
I put it on Facebook as well.
So everyone in Sandwich should have been there.
I think the Facebook post is why so many people are here. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is Tony Broom, who's going to give a kind of view from the hospitality sector about tourist information.
Thanks, Colin. Good evening, everyone. I think just my starting point, just so that everyone's clear, is I'm not here tonight to promote the Bell Hotel. I've had that accusation levelled at me previously. In Sandwich, we bring 20,000 overnight stays to Sandwich in this business per annum. And I think what I'm very conscious of with hospitality at the moment, it's been an incredibly hard time, as it has for lots of businesses. But the smaller businesses in the town must be feeling it pretty hard, and therefore tourism for many stakeholders here becomes more and more important for their viability long term. And I think what we want to be is we want all the people that stay here to be advocates for Sandwich. So when they leave here, they've gone and spent some money in the town, had a good experience, and go on and tell other people. And that's very much this open golf legacy, isn't it? It's all part of that same agenda. And I think that how we can add value as a town will be the reason that tourism offer flourishes or not. The last 2 years have been very solid for staycations, so I'm quite surprised visitor numbers are down. But certainly our occupancy is always high in the summer, so it's unfair to say it's up, but it's been pretty solid. And I think that the key for probably everyone around this table is how we figure out a way to sort of strategise that tourism offer moving forward, whether it's via the council or whatever group. For me personally, I'll speak to any group, if you know what I mean. I think it's just getting that right way where business, residents and the relevant authorities work together. And I think that, personally, I would see that probably coming through the council and with an actual firm business plan that's created about how you guys support us businesses to develop tourism in the town. That's my personal view. It may not be one that others subscribe to, and I appreciate the council's got lots of stuff that it does. But there's no doubt that tourism will drive prosperity and jobs in the town, and much needed jobs for local people, I would suggest. But what we need is a defined approach to tourism. I think too often the easy option is to give someone else a burger van licence and park it on the forecourt. And again, we're going to be fine here at the Bell, but one of the other smaller businesses around the corner, every 200, 300 quid that someone else is taking with one of these pop-ups, for want of a word, it's 200 quid that's not on their till anymore. And that's, you know, must have an effect on them. And I think it's just something we need to consider and have a really clear approach about what we think the best way to develop tourism in the town is. There's lots of things Sandwich does well, we all know that. I've put the pencil down a few and I'll have missed out 100. But I think for me, almost the pinnacle is the sort of Sandwich and Bloom work. When you drive down around the quay, you know, it is, people comment on it every week that stay here. We've got loads of community events, music, food festivals, weekends, Christmas lights, I think was the last one. You know, these are really successful, and a lot of these events drive, I guess, hospitality in the centre of town, and that's great. And I think they're quite well catered for. But I think we've got to look more broadly what the day visitor, how we can sort of get more out of them, get more of them into the town, and effectively allow businesses to take more money. To be frank, I think that the visitor information assistants, I haven't spoken to one. But they've been very visible, and I've seen them as I trawl around Sandwich. I think they've been well received. Certainly, from my point of view, they look good, and indeed the recent Compass Business Group map, for me, I think it's a great reason for people who stay here to get them to actually wander around the town, and then people can sort of show their wares, what they have to offer. In terms of how we move forward, I've got a sort of list of things that I think should be considered as part of that business plan. And you know, may or may not be. I think the key thing is to have a clear strategy. No more so that as the key develops behind us, we can then make sure that our representatives at Dover District Council know what we're wanting as well as what they're wanting as clearly a big investor. I'm sure they'll have some requirements. But if we don't know what we want, we can't really argue if we don't get it, if that makes sense. So that work probably needs to be done. And in no particular, I know Councillor Anderson's done some work about accessibility. But it's not till that was raised to me that you go and park at the quay and just figure out how you get to the middle of town. It's virtually impossible. My biggest bugbear, and this is me representing the Bell, is car parking. Car parking is a huge issue. We've got people paying £180 on a Saturday night parking in a muddy car park at Gazing-Swords. I think that's unacceptable, to be honest. But I do have a bit of a feel like, and I know there's a plan for that. But I think again we need to involve everyone to drive footfall into the town. And then the next thing you then move on to when you get the car parking right is the connectivity. And I know you've mentioned signage, but the connectivity of the town, whether that's access, signage, and the car parking is poor. And even from the train station, how do people know where to go and what to see? And you know, they get the wrong street, they miss, you know, some of the independent shops. They get the right street, they come to the quay, and it's, you know, they spend the money somewhere else. And for me, I think an area where, and I would be looking probably for STC for this, is I think the social media website, other districts do an awful lot to promote the town. So it's not promoting the Bell Hotel or the Fleur de Lis or whoever it happens to be. It's promoting Sandwich as a visitor attraction, and indeed capitalising on the golf offer that we have. Golf is a huge part of tourism in Sandwich, and not that we can be picky, but they tend to be more affluent and have more spending power and more likely to indulge in treats. But also I think Councillor Marie has an understanding of the coach market. And again, all these things feed into different segments in terms of the tourism offer, and they're all equally important, and we should be looking to get a broad representation to help everyone through what's been a tricky time. I think you've mentioned tourist information and phone boxes and leaflets. I think I'll leave for later in the meeting. Another thing that is on my list that I think has gone backwards over the past few years are our toilets. The quality of the toilets, I think is poor. I think that not having them open as much, I appreciate there's a cost, so I'm sure that's part of it. But clean toilets, Chris May will be able to support this, are a fundamental attraction for people. And we get people coming here all the time to use the toilets. Again, that's sort of fine, but you know, we've got great facilities, they should be open. If they can be, in my view. Just quickly, I've probably ranted enough. The other thing for me that's quite important is how we capitalise on the forecourt. We as a town have decided to spend £1 million, and it should be best in class in Kent. For me, we should have a market on there that is famous. We should have people from produced in Kent wanting to get representation on that forecourt. So not necessarily contradicting what other retailers do, but complementing what they do. And that will drive, there's other markets I go to and other things like food festivals. Broadstairs does a very successful food festival. The way you get those food festivals to work is to have the initial retailers supporting in the first place. Once you link in with them, and to do a food festival, I would imagine is pretty simple. The other thing for me, again, is more opportunity to work together. We did a very small initiative with the council, the Guildhall Medieval Centre ourselves. It was a stay and wander around the town experience. We weren't going to do it massively. It was quite interesting to see how we could link in with two other, I'm calling the council business, but two other organisations. And all our people that did stay, we ran it on a Saturday night, which probably wasn't the best night, so full anyway. But they all enjoyed it, and I'm sure they had a really positive experience of Sandwich, which was great. The only other thing for me is, just quickly, is how we maximise the potential of the quayside, Heritage Harbour, Market Street and the forecourt. I'm slightly repeating myself, but these are all really big initiatives that are coming down the line, and I think it's really important that the people that run the town, for want of a word, understand what the needs of the business and the residents are, and do the best to make sure we get the best outcomes for them. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Any questions or comments arising from that?
Yes, I picked up from the last meeting of the working group, which I also observed, the question of the toilets. And it is now on the agenda of the Heritage and Townscape Committee that's meeting on Thursday evening, where I've asked for comparative costs between the staffing that used to be there and the system that is now in place. This is just for the toilets on the quay. And there is an interesting differential, but it's not anything like as large as I expected it to be, because I also asked to include the cost of repair after vandalism, which I think is probably arising out of the fact that the accessibility currently is really not very good. So that's an issue that we will be talking about. And the other comment that I'd just like to make, if possible, is the linkage with golf. I mean, there are towns in the United Kingdom, and one that I'm thinking of is Gullen in Scotland, which is surrounded by really poor, horrible little Scottish towns, and you suddenly, on the bus, get into Gullen, there's a golf course, and there are Michelin-starred restaurants, she shops. It may not be what we want in Sandwich, but nevertheless, it's an incredibly prosperous town, and it's clearly being driven by golf. And I think that connection with golf is absolutely crucial. Oh, and the third thing I wanted to make was I've looked at the Visit Kent site, and it's extremely disappointing because you can hardly find Sandwich. It's always lumped in with Dover and Deal. And we know that Sandwich is a very special place, and that's why people respond so positively to it. It's such a surprise because it never gets mentioned in the national press. It's an exquisite, after all, it is supposed to have been the most important medieval, preserved medieval town. And we really have to push that. And it may be that we are shifting towards more luxurious tourism, people who are willing to spend a lot of money on expensive goods, and things seem to be shifting a bit in terms of the offer, the commercial offer in Sandwich. But it's very disappointing that we're always identified as part of Dover and Deal, which are lovely places, but they have different things to offer. Anyway, sorry, I went on.
Paul, then Carol.
That's it. Yeah, I just wanted to point out the definition. I fully support what Tony's saying. I just wanted to put out a bit of a definition out there, that there is this divide, this tier of councils. So just to point out, say like the quayside actually belongs to and is the domain of Dover District Council. And I can tell everybody in this room, I was here 18 years ago before I got onto the town council, and I was on something called Sandwich Quay Regeneration Group, and we had plans drawn up and all sorts of things like that. It's actually getting the support of Dover District Council to to go ahead with those plans. And on the flip side of that, also the car parking. Car parking comes under the domain of Dover District Council. So we need to really engage and really need to get Dover District Council on board to say, look, we've got these car parking issues, look what's happening with the quay. Sandwich Town Council was told a little while back that Dover District Council did actually have a new development plan for the quay, but it hasn't seemed to have moved forward or come into light at all. So can I just say that there is a definition. Sandwich Town Council is the smaller sibling of Dover District Council with less money, and we really need Dover District Council and Kent County Council to help Sandwich get what it really should have. Thank you.
Sorry, Colin, if I could just come back to Paul. I'm fully aware of what you're saying, I understand that. But unless we have a clear plan at the base level, then effectively what will happen will be whatever other people want. And if we have a clear plan, then we can lobby our representatives who represent us at Dover District Council with a clear vision. If we don't have that plan, then we may not be at the table. And in fairness to DDC, there was a consultation process to get some initial ideas, and we were fortunate enough to be asked to give some view on that. So they have. It's not a case of they're not. For me, it's more, you know, all the people in this room live here. It's the town it's our town, as it were. And unless we know what we want, it's very difficult to ask them to give us what we want, if that makes sense.
I was just sorry if I come back on that. I was just saying 18 years ago we had a plan for the quay. So the Sandwich Regeneration Group had a plan for the quay, which cost £2,500 for the consultants to produce, but Dover District Council wouldn't go ahead with it at the time. So.
And the quay is more or less empty now, isn't it? Apart from the P22 and the medieval boat, there's nothing there. Carol.
Very full.
No, well, there are two things I'd quite like to pick up on. The issue about the vision for Sandwich, which is where the Guildhall forecourt came from, and where the new vision for Sandwich has been in the pipeline for an awful long time. And yes, we all heard, because it's been on the town team agenda for what seems like years, but we all heard that there was consultation, but it doesn't seem to have got to everybody, and maybe that should have gone out to a larger group of people, so that the contribution they can make, the townspeople can make, should have been taken into account. So that was just my sort of follow-up. But the other issue I have is, I agree with you, we need a plan, but Sandwiches, we are very fragmented, in the way it's laid out, but also in what it delivers, what it offers. So you've got your festivals, we've got the things on the flowers, we've got wonderful restaurants, lots of variations of restaurants and public houses and so on. So there's a lot there to offer, and obviously it's history. What doesn't seem to come out at all is this one unique selling point that we can either we have to encompass all of those things in and say this is Sandwich, or do we say this one thing is Sandwich and everything else that happens actually supports that one unique selling point. And I don't know whether we have that capability ourselves on our own to do that, or whether we do need some professional help in trying to find that way forward. Because I think it will remain, the people who are interested in its history will continue, those in the hospitality trade will continue, we'll all continue, but we need a plan, and you're right, we need something that's whole, that we can say this is where we're going.
Can I come in on that? Because we spent hours and hours and hours doing exactly that in Tourism Committee 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
I totally agree with the need for the strategy. Mark's very good at dates. When was the Sandwich Tourism Initiative strategy set up and spent £20,000 in 1 year?
March. Oh, no, that was 2009.
2009.
That was November 2009.
Sandwich
Guild Girls.
Sandwich Town Council put in 5,000. Alan Smith, you've just mentioned, did. Bell Hotel did. Salutation did. And £20,000 was there just for marketing, promoting Sandwich for 1 year only. And that was perception of the importance, the size of the importance. What it led to was working with Destination Alliance, which didn't work very well. It then led to the setting up the Sandwich Town Community Interest Company, which Mark and myself were directors of for some years, and that has more recently folded. What we were good at strategy, we were quite good at strategy in those middle years. We might as well say it ended with COVID, because that was then a big pause. What was the date of the Crabble football ground strategy
That's
meeting?
what I was about to say. So there is an adopted tourism strategy for the whole of our district based on that feedback,
which Sandwich Town was working on with Dover Council.
Yeah, and across our entire district. So we liaised with about 150 tourism businesses as part of consultation on that, and numerous guys to find out exactly the information you've said. So
that 4 years ago,
survey. It was, I want to say 2019. Did we meet at Crabble?
Probably.
So the strategy was adopted in 2021. So the tourism minister came down to launch it. Actually, here we were sat around this table to showcase Sandwich as well at that same time. That has a lot of the groundwork, but the purpose of this was to then work with all the parties, which is why it was fantastic to be interviewed, to be asked to come here to listen. Because I think this is a key thing. It's exactly what Tony said. It's about working together. It's communication and collaboration, which is in essence what everything is about. And I have, it's a Marmite saying, but my team, we use the analogy for team, which is together everyone achieves more. And that is what we've adopted as part of our belief. So listening, working with you is the only way we can achieve as a district and as a town. And it's about working together, which the Open did fantastically well. And the people who were coming, unfortunately, COVID limited that, but some of the things and the ideas and the work which was coming from the Sandwich businesses who were there, so through the community and business working group, was absolutely fantastic. We wanted to deliver something truly fantastic for Sandwich and the wider area.
Well, the point I'd like to really end on is we were very active on strategy. Going back a few years. You might as well say it ended with COVID. It might have ended actually just before then. It doesn't really matter, because it's convenient to say it wasn't really possible to pick it up again. It feels to me that this initiative is the start all over again, which is something which is really important, that you're always developing and revisiting your strategy. And we've stopped doing that for the last 3 years. And the question now is, what is the body that should be doing that? Because the Tourism Committee was set up when, I'm kind of moving on to events a little bit, when the events and the Community Interest Company and the Sandwich Tourism Initiative realised that not only do we need to work together, we needed to work with Sandwich Town Council, and there wasn't a tourism committee. So we set one up. So the active tourism committee, Mark, is only about 8 or 9 years old, isn't it?
Well, we did have a tourism committee. It used to meet once a year. It used to decide on it used to receive the visitor numbers for the museum. Not the museum, the Tourist Information Centre, and agree on the working hours for the ensuing year. And that was it.
And that's all we did. And since then, we not only worked with Dover to develop strategies, we invented the town guide, we invented the promotion Come to Sandwich, because we worked out that the bigger agenda that we're talking about is, first of all, how do you promote Sandwich to get it on the radar of people who live, say, more than 10 miles away? How do you bring them in? What do you bring them in for, which is where events comes into it. And then when they're here, how do you look after them? And all the things we're saying about car parking, toilets, signage, accessibility is so desperately important. So out of the work that the Tourism Committee did, we got a budget from Sandwich Town Council and invented the Day in Sandwich leaflet and started distributing it through commercial companies to Greater London, wider Kent, West Kent. And that was a focused, thought-out strategy to try and get Sandwich more on the map in people's consciousness, and then work out when they get here, what do they do? We went up to some trade shows in London, a Day in Sandwich salutation, town and garden, half day in town, half day in garden. We tried to work with Broadstairs tourism to say half day in Broadstairs, half day in Sandwich. We definitely got better linking up with Visit Kent and Dover, Whitecliff strategy. And all of those things, if we go back 6 or 7 years, we're pretty active and we're producing. And what I would suggest is it's time to revisit all of that and start off with the structure. This working group, I think, has been set up as a temporary thing. Out of it probably needs to come a structure so that all of the parties work together in an ongoing way to look at strategy first, plan second.
I mean,
which is what Tony was saying.
I agree there has to be a plan. I mean, the town team 3 or 4 years ago did a draft business plan which encompassed all of these issues, but that's fell by the wayside, didn't it, because of COVID. So I think we need to revive that. And one of the things that plan said in draft was Sandwich needs to find its USP. You know, what is it? Is it an independent shop town, or a food town, or a music town, or a history town?
We spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours going around that one. We always came back to the same thing, medieval.
It's medieval at the market town, and we don't really have a good market at all.
I mean, I was in town this morning and it was like a ghost town. It was empty. Where are the people?
Today, I can tell you it's been a ghost town.
But a lot of that, the problem is that a lot of the shops aren't open.
Well, and that's another thing. If you have a strategy, it's no good promoting the town far and wide if people come here and they find the shops are closed or the pubs are closed. So there needs to be a kind of unified approach.
But it is chicken and egg, and I think to judge a shop on a dank day in January is probably slightly harsh when they've worked a lot of hours over December. But I think the key is getting the overarching message right. I think you guys did a short video clip in your deals.
We have, yes. So we individually promote Sandwich. So we do Whitecliff's Country, then we have one for Dover, one for Deal, one for Sandwich, promo videos, materials. I brought a few. We have overarching ones. But we do have individual ones too, so that's something we've pushed far and wide.
But the point of all, it's not about too many individual things, it's about the whole package.
Exactly, because visitors don't see boundaries. Yeah. So a visitor to Deal won't see a boundary to Sandwich. It's like Dover District, they don't see a boundary to Broadstairs and Thanet. It's how the visitor works. So it's about bringing everyone together, especially as an East Kent, which we spend a lot of time with. And obviously work with Visit Kent as well, but equally we're part of the England's Coast project, which is about connecting basically the England Coast Path, which goes around highlighting our section upon it. We're looking at every opportunity to maximise promotion, marketing, to drive people to these areas, and visitor surveys do come out. I've got it in front of me. So history and heritage, as you were just saying, is what people are most satisfied with when they come to Sandwich. It's what they're looking for. It's why they come. Medieval is a word which is regularly used. It's interesting that the second on the satisfaction score is a feeling of welcome, which I think is credit to you as businesses and shop owners. That if that's number 2 on the list of what visitors are saying when they come, and bear in mind that everyone is a visitor. So just because you live in Sandwich, you visit the town centre, you are still a visitor to place. So I happen to live in a different town. When I come here or visit the town where I live, I'm still a visitor, and I think it's that mindset which you clearly have, because that's why a feeling of welcome comes so high, because it is that mindset which is really key.
I mean, out of the planning and the vision and the strategising, we came up with medieval. But one thing I do want to touch on, we also recognise that we're appalling at using social media and modern marketing methods. I'm also to be chair of Medieval Trust, and I'd like to say that the way Dave Batcher leads the social media strategy there is brilliant. The reach it has is fantastic. Again, Sandwich doesn't actually have an organisation to drive this, and it's desperately needed. Dover actually has got a lot of good material, and we do use videos, etc.
And our photos are freely accessible.
And they're on our websites and our Facebook's bit, but it's not all joined up, and there isn't a body in Sandwich to pull it all together, to turn it into a social media strategy. It's desperately needed.
Chris?
Thanks, Colin. I'm just really pleased that the word medieval has come up. I mean, I would just say 3 things. The completest medieval town in England, Magna Carta, and Richborough Roman Fort, the entrance to Britannia. I mean, if we can't capitalise on that, no other town in this country can. We have that history, and it demands to be marketed and promoted.
It's great talking about all these things, but who's actually going to do it?
It needs a body and a budget.
Okay.
Well, the new Heritage and Townscape Committee has a kind of overview of this. So really
I
that's
would also
Claire's committee has to
as
take that
Claire
forward.
was talking about toilets earlier on. I think the toilet in the Guildhall is, for want of a better word, a disgrace. At least the gents. I can't speak for the ladies.
Inside the Guildhall.
Inside.
Oh, right, well.
No, not inside the Guildhall. The
The
car
ones
park.
that-
Cattle market.
Yes.
I mean, really, that does
Yeah.
need upgrading,
Yes.
and maybe you could take that on board.
Yes.
But they were nearly demolished a few years ago, if you remember.
Yeah.
They
Another
belong to the
doc-
district council, hang on, those toilets belong to the district council.
They do.
Yes. So, I mean, the town council cannot demolish them and rebuild them, I don't think.
There nearly was a plan to demolish them. And you might want to dust off the document that was audited by Bachelor Coop to look at the cost of running toilets here and there, or joining it up together. Again, that's a few years old now. But again, that needs dusting off and revisiting.
So which document is that? Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, this is Bachelor Coop commissioned into looking at the costings, because at one point the cattle market lavatories were closed for several months and everyone was up in arms. The Chamber of Commerce got together and commissioned a report from Bachelor Coop to look into the costings of running the manned services on the quay and keeping the lavatories in the cattle market open.
Right.
The recommendations weren't adopted, but I think the project analysis and the stats did actually serve a purpose. While Sandwich Town Council decided to spend rather more money on the quay toilets at that time, at least it led to both facilities being kept open. It might have been a better way of doing it, which would be more cost effective according to the Bachelor Coop report. But nevertheless, the importance of keeping both sets of facilities there and open, and the need for them was demonstrated.
Yes.
And again, it's been lost sight of. And the minute of the last meeting said the Medieval Centre might be interested in looking after the quay toilets is only because they get pestered on not an hourly basis constantly about the toilets.
Well, I should say it was that point that you made that, it clarified for me that we had to talk about it as soon as possible. And as I say, it's on the agenda for
Yeah,
this.
good.
If you had done your survey in 2020 during lockdown and actually talked to people who were walking on a daily basis, you would have found out that the issue of lack of toilet facilities would have come right at the top of your list, because we were watering almost daily along the quay, and it was by the minute that people were saying, there's no toilet, where can I have a toilet? And you've got families out, you had elderly people out, you had a whole range of comparatively local people out who had, I think, ventured perhaps into town for one of the first times because they could walk, they had time and they were walking around, and it was an absolute disgrace that the toilets on the quay were not open. When they were open, you've got to use a card, which people are very reluctant to use because some people get charged for that card, and it's only 20p or whatever it costs a pound. They don't want to use that, and the ones up the back of the cattle market were not open at all during that time. They were closed for ages. So it was only after an awful lot of pressure that we got toilets opened at all. So it's essential for visitors.
Christine.
Can I say, I've noticed that DDC have been refurbishing toilets, public toilets in Deal,
Yes.
and I asked Councillor Friend when it would be our turn in Sandwich, and he couldn't really give me an indication, but he said our time will come. So I don't know if you can follow that up at all.
It is the toilets are a big thing across the district, so it's on unless we are working our way through. Because there's some in Dover which are being done as well.
I think
There's some at Dover and they were done in William as well.
Yeah.
But this is kind of my point, is if we don't have STC fighting that corner, we're going to be at the back of the queue, and we need to establish those priorities. And Anne's point is quite right. Whilst we don't own them, so what's the council doing in terms of representing?
Can we find out what the timeline is for Sandwich? Because it's been impossible to get an answer on that.
When I get back tomorrow, I'll have a chat with the assets
And
team.
also if they're
Thank
going
you.
to include a disabled toilet in the when they refurbish the one in the cattle market, because this disabled toilet is often not accessible, but at least there is one there. But there is nothing available for anyone at the other end of the town. So that in itself is really I mean, I think it's against the law now not to have something.
The thing is, it worked a treat when we had staff in the toilet. On the gig. It worked very, very well, and yes, it costs money. Sandwich Town Council's got plenty of money. We've got the Tollbridge Fund, and the remit for the Tollbridge Fund is for the people of Sandwich. Let's use it for that and not pay massive salaries out of it, which is not what it's designed for. Okay?
That's another debate altogether.
So this is a bit of a change of subject, but I think it's important to note that I've seen a press release that said that the White Cliffs Visitor Centre in Dover has won a national award as being one of the best visitor information centres. Now that's something that we should make sure that we link into and hear how it's done. So if we're reimagining what we do, we can learn from the best.
And that's why, so unfortunately she couldn't come tonight with me, but a lady called Lucy who runs that forum is fantastic.
Okay, I think we'll wind up that, unless there's any other pressing points. I think the outcome for me is we need a strategy, we need a plan, and I think it has to be down to the town team and the town council working together on that to get a kind of unified plan which seeks input from all the businesses.
Make sure we read in what's been before, because otherwise we're just continuously reinventing the wheel, and a lot of work, very good work has been done.
So Chris, I'm grateful for you to be here. If you could send us those surveys and any
I'm quite happy to be the ghost in the corner for
helpful
these
to know
meetings,
the
just to
background.
listen, and then if you need things like it helps or to one of my team councils.
Okay.
Tourism is vital for the district. I
It
mean,
is,
pre-COVID, it was generating about £302 million a year for our economy. 17% of everyone who works in our district worked in this industry.
I think the other thing
COVID hit it badly, and it is growing.
Yeah.
So it's growing luckily, and I'll touch wood as I say it, rapidly, and it's coming back. But we're not back there yet. We're on the right path.
I think the other thing we need to recognise is there's a kind of hierarchy of visitors, isn't there? Because we've got probably 500,000 people who live within 20 miles of Sandwich who are potential day visitors. But then you've got wider visitors from the rest of the country, the rest of the world, and it's about how you target those different audiences.
You're right, and a day visitor spends on average around £30 a day during their visit per person. The overnight is about 300.
Yeah.
For the length they stay. So it's
that's another debate about the quality of visitors as well, isn't it?
We've got to put our rates up.
Yeah.
People who spend money.
It's about 3.2 miles.
So just one point I'd like to make, that the new kid on the block is the Wake Park, and people come from huge area around. So I don't know how long, I'm told an hour is kind of as much as some people can do. Then they've got the bit where you're towed round, which I think is longer. But we need to find some way to work with the Wake Park so that we can, if people are here, we can get them into town.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we should be talking to the people running the Wake Park as well.
Yeah.
It's the same issue as the golfers, getting the golfers to come in.
We can help it.
Right, we need to move on because Steve has to go. So the next item on the agenda is Steve, who's going to talk about Sandwich events, and you're chair of the Sandwich events.
Yeah, the Sandwich Community Events Association was brought together when we started doing more events out of the same process that we've been talking about. The Sandwich had its Sandwich Festival, which has got its own history, and Christmas lights. We've now got 8 annual events, which most towns of this size would be happy, I think, to have 2 or 3. We regularly get the comment that for the size of town of this size, to have 8 is going some. Each event has got its own organising team. And the job of the Sandwich Community Events Association is to bring it together and coordinate to get some economies of scale on things like insurance and owning gazebos and using storage facilities, but not to tell each event how to run its own affairs. Again, I haven't got time to go into the history, but the weekend we wanted to run a French market to raise a few bob to go to Honfleur, and Town Council and Chamber were concerned that we would actually take a bit of money away from the local businesses. So we did a survey of all the local businesses saying, do you think a French market's a good idea? And they all said yes. There's a little bit of a concern, a bit of derision actually. Are you really going to bring busloads of people into town? Yeah. And actually what stops these events getting any bigger is accessibility and parking. we don't have to worry too much about more thousands of people coming into town for our main events like Folk and Ale and the weekend, because people, if they can't park, they turn away and go somewhere else. And we use the car parking facilities absolutely to capacity, including when it's dry enough, Cowleys Meadow. And for the weekend, you'll see as many as 200, 250 cars parked in Cowleys, in addition to all the other facilities that we use. We're not too bad on publicity, promotion. Each event will do its own thing. Some are better at using social media than others. We've got a good website. We pioneered certain things like the roadside boards, but working with the organisations, including Visit Kent, Whitecliffs, etc., is important. And we learned a long time ago, it's up to Sandwich Town and Sandwich Town Council to put your own best foot forward and tell people what you want. Don't wait for them to come to you and ask, what can they do? It's up to us to say we want more exposure on Visit Kent, we want more exposure on Whitecliffs. Most of the time the door is open there if we want to go through it. But it's up to us to put our best foot forward. The events for 2023 are written up in the Community Ad Mag, page 24. So if you want dates in your diary, if you want a quick thumbnail of the 8 events, there they are. No point in me going through them at the moment.
Steve, did you? I looked at this and was a bit worried because I also saw that the announcement about the delay in the Guildhall forecourt, which now doesn't start till February at some point, and it wasn't due to finish till the end of May. And we've got 2 events that require. One is the All Fair, isn't it? You've got food festival.
Food fair and the weekend will both have to have a plan B in case the forecourt overruns.
So you can still go ahead. But
we will. Well, food fair is an awkward one because last year was a disaster for reasons I won't go into today, and it needs rebuilding. And we'll take a decision at the end of February. Have we got enough quality exhibitors to do it, or do we postpone for another year? If it goes ahead, then whether it can be on the forecourt will have to be in Dell Street, Market Street, King Street instead. The weekend, I'm promised, is safe to use the forecourt. If things go badly wrong, we'll have to have a plan B to go elsewhere, but we'll do something.
And the sandwich competition, I mean, I think you have had that couple of years running, and I don't know, it justified to me what the sandwich was about. People were quite interested in that. Is that something that we can... What
it actually said to me is how difficult it is to get anything like that run successfully. We got excellent external judges, including Tim Anderson, who just on television won MasterChef, to judge it, but we couldn't get exhibitors to put sandwiches into exhibit. And the common reason was the shops and restaurants saying, look, we're so busy, you're bringing all these visitors into town, you're doing a great job bringing all these visitors into town, how can we possibly take time out, also at the same time, to go and make sandwiches and bring them in the street to be judged? It was just a bit of a catch-22. So the kids' one was not bad in the end, but we had to stop doing it because the support from the people who would have hopefully made it work wasn't there.
Is everyone familiar with the events that take place during the year? So, just a question for businesses. So do these events increase footfall and trade for you?
No.
They do for the pubs and restaurants.
A lot of it, they do pubs and restaurants, but a lot of the time, a lot of retailers close if it's bank holiday. They close on that Monday, and that's something that.
Yeah, but they're not normally on Mondays, but
well,
it doesn't increase footfall because a number of the events are food and drink entertainment based. So people come in, they blink it, they go to either the food stall, the entertainment stall, or whatever. They just walk straight past the shops. However, having said that, I appreciate that we have to do it, and it promotes the town, and we like to think that one day they'll come back. So yes, we support it, but don't think, like a lot of people say, there's 10,000 people in the town, like the Christmas lights, for instance, didn't do anything for us. In fact, very often, it's the opposite. But we'll support it because I think it's good for the town, and in the long run, okay, we may benefit.
The estate agents have told me many, many times that people, while they're at the event, discover Sandwich and say, oh, what a lovely place. They look in the estate agent when they come back weeks and months later, and many have ended up coming to live here, starting off with the events. But on that particular weekend, they might not necessarily get any inquiries.
But to try and buy a house in Sandwich is quite difficult because they go very quickly.
Mm.
So, yeah, they would sell them anyway.
I mean, when there's an event on, do you put a stall outside your shop?
It's a bit difficult with greeting cards.
What?
A bit difficult with greeting cards. They tend to blow away.
Tony tries to try it lots of times to get rid of his old stock, but
It's not a complaint. I'm merely saying is that a lot of people think because there are 1,000 people in town that the shops are doing well. The opposite is very often the case. Not always. There have been the odd. I remember one particular French weekend. It was like Christmas Day. It was fantastic. You know, leading up to Christmas, it was fantastic. But it's very rare.
Different shops will get different responses. So I think Priory Interiors do quite well on the weekend, but not Folk and Ale. It's a different type of audience mix.
Yeah.
But the pubs and restaurants and cafes do ever so well.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that the Folk and Ale is probably the premier event in your list.
No, the weekend.
You're saying that you run surveys, but I think, if I remember rightly, when the Open was, when it should have been here originally, and it was the Sandwiches Open and so on, the presentation then talked about the number of visitors who would come back as a result of coming to the golf, and there was a percentage based on the surveys that were done in the north when they had them up there. So if we're saying that we think people do come back, is it not useful to do a survey during one of our festivals, so that you can actually ask specifically to people, have you used, or which establishments have you used while you've been here? Did you find it easy to move around, and so on? And would this make you come back to Sandwich? Because that's something which is concrete that perhaps the businesses can build on. And, you know, did you find any of these shops, or which shops did you find? Because that's the other thing. Where did they go to find those shops? Because it's so spread out in Sandwich. But it might be useful to do the survey.
Definitely. Yeah, 100% we can add that in and get surveys done. Because it's good you raise the Open as well, because the Open's quite an interesting one. So you'll remember that, so places like Port Rush and other places, so the shops changed their offer to meet the golf visitor. So they were doing champagne out of certain things, and there were others selling hoodies, and they made lots of, even though that wasn't their traditional shop. So I was thinking whether, as well as surveys, whether there's a way we can look at like a business toolkit of sort. We did one for the golf, but whether we look at one which is around events, maybe working with Steve and things like that. And it's just an idea, and I'm speaking and thinking. Yeah, that's where we need to make sure we can.
Some shops price it on 2 weeks because they know they're not going to make any money at all. So they need to be allowed out.
So I think it's so around the toolkit can be those areas we can look at. But I'm speaking out loud, but it's an area we can look at. So I think events are really, because they give you a reason to visit now. Whereas, and you'll notice this with Dover Castle or Stonehenge, you can go any day. So they now deliver events because that event means you have to go there, rather than say I'll go tomorrow and you never go. So it's around that sort of thinking. So events are really important, those placemaking.
With the golf event, that is something that Dover District Council has got to get a handle on, because Sandwich Town Council pleaded with Dover District Council that the Royal and Ancient would allow what's called the let out, so that people that have gone to the course and only see certain stars playing and all that sort of thing can come out to the town. It's no good, say like Carol or somebody saying, oh, how many of the people that came to the town and came back? Because they never came to the town in the first place. I took this up with Councillor Nigel Collar, and I said to him, I said, will you be letting people out? He said, no. Because, let me finish, Chris, I'll tell you the reason why. Because over the golf, I took a lot of evidence. Number one, I went down and I was allowed right into the course. I was allowed right into the hospitality village, and I saw what they had on offer down there. That was the draw, and the Royal and Ancient know it. The Royal and Ancient get hundreds of thousands of pounds from people to have stalls and shops and what have you down there. The golfers and even their wives don't come into the town. They're not allowed into the town. You know, Chris, because Nigel Collis showed me the plans before it happened. The traffic comes in, there's one route in, and there's one route out. And that's what happens. When we have these events, it's you know, Steve Laslett has done so much work on events in this town, but that's what they are. They're in the town. And this isn't happening with the golf. Dover District Council have got to come on board with us and understand that. And we've really struggled with that. I've got on this iPad, council iPad, in my bag right now, and I can show them to anybody who wants to see them. I came in on the qualifying days to the town, and I was walking up the streets of Sandwich in the middle of the road. I've got them all on here, on this iPad. It was deserted. There was tumbleweed going up the road.
Sorry, can I just say, for us as a business officer, for the golf, we put on extra trips every day for the visitors that come in. We didn't see anyone. We didn't have any trips.
How many people did you get?
None. We ended up operating out around.
And how many extra staff did you have on as a business for the golf?
Not extra staff, but there was no point, there was no customers.
Yeah.
We didn't
taking what we were being paid. So I'm a paid employee, and I was not paying money, they were paying me.
Obviously this is something that with the golf, this isn't just a Dover thing, this is something they do at all the courses. So once you're on course, you can't leave the course. But it is conversations we've had with them, because I remember Nigel has raised it, and I know I have too, and I think it is something they're looking at for future possibilities. There is, with the pandemic, this was a slightly different one, so you know it could not have happened, which would have been bad. So it's learning the lessons and connecting. So we spent a lot of time making sure information was out about Sandwich. We had volunteers out on all the routes, directing people to come to the town centres. That's what we put in place. We called it the event makers, so we made it an NVQ course. The students could also get a qualification to be running those type of things. So I think these are all things which can progress and grow, but equally working with yourselves to how we can benefit, because there was some really good plans Steve and others put forward, and unfortunately the pandemic affected that.
Can I say something as well?
Of course you can. Sorry, I'm not the chair, so my apologies.
Also, it was actually made worse because when you came into Sandwich, you had the one-way system, it's just one way in, one way out. Yeah. They also closed off a lot of free parking on the roads in, which were full of cones. There must be about 500 or 1,000 cones, so people couldn't stop anywhere. Plus, there was some sort of flag saying visit Deal, visit Dover.
Yeah, visit Sandwich.
It
was a third. We divided it in thirds, so 100% was Sandwich.
I remember seeing banners and it didn't mention Sandwich. It mentioned Dover, it mentioned Deal, it mentioned somewhere else, but it did not mention Sandwich.
I had an art exhibition on that week, and it was empty in St Mary's.
Yeah.
And the town was a ghost town during the day, but in the evening it did pick up. There was talk actually of a campsite.
Yeah, that
didn't happen, unfortunately. That was local produce as well.
That would have driven football.
Yeah. Christina.
I just wanted to say, the idea that you had about retailers changing their offer, that has been done. I have seen that in the town, but actually the town was deserted, and it felt really sad that they had gone and put in the extra effort and the extra expense of doing that, and yet they weren't seeing any benefit.
Mark.
Can I just
Well, this is not the first
Hold on, John.
Sorry.
Mark.
Can I just ask, what's the next scheduled date year for the Open Golf Championship across Sandwich?
Nothing has been finalised yet.
I mean, it's all speculative at the moment, isn't it? So we can't really see that as the saviour of the town.
But I also think, you know, there's far more to Sandwich than the Open Golf.
Yeah.
And I think that the reality is that the RNA hold the keys, to be frank. We're not going to turn it away. And Paul's point as well made us down the course a lot. They also need to sell those hospitality places. That's part of their P&L. And I think we should probably focus on the other 7 intervening years or 8 intervening years.
I mean, it's basically a city that gets bogged down in the middle of the countryside, isn't it?
And if 60,000 people came through the town,
Self-contained.
you'd have lots of people saying the town's gridlocked if you don't get through the centre of it.
So, Chris.
Just very, very quickly, I mean, picking up something, I can't remember, I think it might have been Tony mentioning about the market, but the joy of going into Deal on a Saturday and walking through a pedestrianised area. There's a genuine feeling. It's not the same the rest of the week, but it's fantastic on a Saturday, and it's that market. And talking to one of the silver chap in there just before Christmas, he said it's transformed because they have brought in a new market manager, and they've got colour-coded gazebos. It's genuinely pleasant to go in there.
It's that cafe culture, isn't it?
It totally is.
I have to say that I don't wish to criticise Sandwich Town Council, but I think our Thursday market is a pretty dismal affair.
It's got really bad.
Could be a lot better.
I think one of the reasons, to be fair, why it's kind of going down at the moment is because of the refurbishment of the forecourt. Nobody's quite sure when it's starting and it's happening, and that's one reason why I think they haven't been coming. I might be incorrect on this, but we do need to certainly look at what we do once the refurbishment's done and grow it. Because the market's very good.
I mean, given that we're surrounded by farm shops and vineyards.
But talking to the trader at Dover, Deal, just before Christmas, it was about the reception that they received when they were trading here on the Thursdays, and there was a period when it was on the up. It was well supported. There were antiques, and it felt as though this could be something very positive. I think we can blame the Guildhall redevelopment, but I don't think we also got to be prepared when it's completed to have that, so that Thursday is an absolutely dedicated day to Sandwich, and all those traders that currently go to Deal on a Saturday come to Sandwich on a Thursday.
And maybe moving some of those stalls that are inside the church back out onto the marketplace, because all of that adds sort of some character.
King Street.
That was happening.
Was it?
Should happen again.
Okay, should we just a couple more points and then we'll move on?
Just quickly, I think that the point's been made, but it's slightly disappointing. There isn't a plan for the market post. I mean, it's starting soon, and we'll be sitting here in 6 months' time going, oh, well, what's the plan going to be? We need to be geared up, we need to have those producers in place, and we need to be geared up for a big launch, in my view, so that all the people that are in that area have a chance of visiting the shops.
Yeah. Okay. Any final point?
I would say on market day it's quite interesting. I was talking about events and all that. I don't really see very many customers before about 11:30 on a Thursday, because they're all on the market. And you cannot make it up. I don't mean fabricate it. You cannot make up 2.5 hours, 3 hours lost in the rest of the day, because the afternoons in Sandwich at the moment, I'd be better off opening a morgue. It is dead, as it were. So you've got a very short period to do your trading. And the first 2 or 3 hours on a Thursday, I'm afraid, everybody's on the market. I'm not knocking the market, but that's a fact. Well, you've got to be very careful what you do.
But if they're not on the market, they're not anywhere, are they? So footfall
No,
is
that's not
footfall.
true, because on the other days they are there.
I mean, I shop in the market and then I might go in other shops as well. So
Yeah, about 11:30.
it's all complementary, isn't it?
About 11:30. So maybe I should open my shop at 11:30.
Okay. Right, shall we, unless there's any other pressing points on that, I think we can move on to the Compass group and the map project, which Claire, do you want to give just a brief summary of how the Compass group came together and what you've done?
Okay, basically it's a group of 3 people, 3 businesses who came together, and we just really wanted to sort of brainstorm a bit, and we felt that Sandwich had a lot to offer. We just wanted to find a way of encouraging people to come into the town and to wander around the town. And so the first one we came up with was a self-funded map. Now, I haven't got enough for everyone, I'm afraid. I'll just pass them around. And basically, we kind of, I mean, I'm quite a new business to the town, but something that was very obvious to me was that, and others, when the business turned up, they didn't quite know where to go. There wasn't very much signage, there wasn't a clear map. So the idea was that we produced this map, and we've started it from the quayside, because that's where a lot of visitors turn up, either by coaches or obviously in their cars.
it's also where a lot of people actually turn up and they don't perhaps, but they don't actually bother to come into town. So the idea behind the map was that we would have them in the shops, in restaurants, in hotels, and then when visitors turned up, they could just tell one of. Now, it's not a map that says the Bell Hotel is here, or actually the Bell Hotel isn't on there, having said that, but that's just for orientation. But it's not a map that says where businesses are, but the idea is to encourage people to wander around the town and to discover the businesses, cafes, pubs, etc. that we have. So round the edge is the purple, and then the purple that's actually on the map indicates where businesses are placed in the town. So as you can see, and as you know, businesses are all over the place. We're not all in it's not linear, we're sort of here, there and everywhere. But we just felt that we needed to start somewhere and produce something for visitors to have, and that's our first offering. We've got a couple of changes to make. We've got a road that's not named correctly, but it's a start, and we hope to sort of do further things with it in the future. We felt it was very important for visitors to have something available, and lots of people said, how do I get to this part? And obviously it's very difficult to describe that, whereas terrible map, they're available in pads, terrible map, hand them over, and hopefully it helps. So that's how it came around.
Very nice.
Can I just make an observation here, because I volunteer at the museum, sometimes Mark actually, but we often find that we get as many people coming in asking for visitor information as we do to look around the museum, and these maps would be fabulous to have some there, because it's really difficult trying to point people in the right direction, where to go and how to do it. But I mean, that is really good indeed.
And I think something like this jotted around the town would be great as well. So I don't know, I know that on the agenda is phone boxes and perhaps using them as mini tourist information, but perhaps we would be allowed to have such maps in the telephone boxes. That would also be very handy. Even something in Perspex somewhere. But we have actually self-funded this map, so obviously we would need financial assistance, because we've done this, which is fine, but we can't continue to fund this ourselves.
Claire.
Hi.
Yes, I think it's wonderful, but I do have one disappointment. We tend to assume that everybody comes to Sandwich by car, and actually I think probably, though we can't be absolutely certain, that a lot of people come by train, and increasingly, hopefully, will do so. And the train station is off the map, and I do think it's very important. Somebody mentioned the railway station recently, but we do have a map at the railway station which indicates clearly to people how they can come through that interesting route, over the wall if they're fit enough, straight into with the wonderful bowling green. It's a wonderful way to walk into a town. And I just think we need to think harder about how to connect the railway station with the town.
Well, it would also come down to signage, I think, as well. I mean, from our point of view, we set this up as businesses for businesses.
Yes.
Because we wanted to get visitors who arrive to encourage them to wander around the town and discover not just the sort of the graves and salts or whatever else we have to offer, to many things, but also to discover the businesses. It was there primarily to support businesses. Yes, here we're saying about the train, that there needs to be a connection between people turn up. Where do they go? How do they get there?
What would be fantastic, to answer your question, is that this map is everything inside the town walls.
Yes.
And of course the train station isn't.
No.
But I think we have these heritage boards. There's one in St Clement's Garden, and there's a few, and they're all faded and horrible, most of them.
Yeah.
They could possibly be replaced.
Yes.
With one of these, and there could be one on the quay, one in the car park by the Guild, behind the Guildhall, one by the train station, and people see that, and from this they can get an idea how to get into town, and then pick up one of these in one of the shops or one of the places. So I think it could work really, really well, and I think these heritage boards do need replacing because they are faded and horrible.
I think
So
there
this
is
would be
some proposal to do that, but
We've been working with the town councils and all the parish councils. That's this year that they're all being done.
Okay.
Yeah, they are being refurbished. Yeah, they
All
are.
right, well, maybe we can have one or two more. There isn't one on the quay, there isn't one in the Guildhall
That's on the list.
car park,
Yeah.
and there isn't one at the station. So maybe we could have 3 extra ones, please, with this, the bigger version of this.
Yeah, and we've got we changed, you remember the posters used to be covered with lots of adverts within all the car parks, so they're now, it show maps of Sandwich, you are here and Waking, and we're doing the same at the train stations across the entire district. But this is brilliant, and if I could get that for the VIC, we can equally share this. So we send sometimes with the cruise companies, they come over Sandwich with the buses. This would be perfect for people on those. So if I could get a copy, that'd be fantastic.
I mean, I think the map is great, Claire. I mean, is this the final version?
No, this is the first version. There's a couple of alterations we need to make. There's a mistake with the road. Yes,
there's a stream that doesn't exist.
Yes, in the stream it doesn't exist.
And various things. But I think, I hate to be critical, Chris, but I think the maps that you've got on the quay and they're not very good. You know, the green ones. I mean, they're a common theme in Deal.
Which show where
White Cliffs.
it's the district approach across.
And this way of switching north and south, I think, makes much more sense. Because you're looking at the town from the river. Makes perfect sense to me. So.
Chris, you just mentioned the tourists coming in from the cruises on the buses into Sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
The instruction for bus drivers is to park on the quay, and there are the 2 spaces there, and to allow 1 hour for visitors to wander around the town. And I think we need longer than that.
We're working with that. No, it's how the cruise industry works. So it's their bookings and those type of things. So we are working with that with the ground handlers. But we're trying to spread that reach, because historically they were going obviously to Canterbury, to London. So we said, well, actually, you've got so much here, come and see medieval Sandwich as a prime example, because you're not going to find that anywhere else to walk around, and it linked to the survey. So this is all a working project, but as Tony said, and we've all kind of said, it's about working together, because if we don't know about these things, we can't promote these things. So it's
absolutely. I was just a bit horrified when I saw 1 hour, because I thought those tourists are going to have very little opportunity to actually discover Sandwich.
And we want them to spend money in a pub or
fish and chips.
Fish and chips. Mark, sorry.
There was some discussion a few years back about converting the old KCC depot on the Ash Road into parking. Including coach park.
I think that was linked to
having
housing
a footway.
That's now in the local plan for housing.
It was linked to the housing development.
Hold on.
Sorry. Are you also looking at signage? Because I know it's been mentioned.
Yeah.
Being a resident of St George's, unbelievable how many times people get lost and they have no idea, excuse me, my voice is going, how to get into the town. People come out of the train station and they look lost and they're wandering. And I don't know why there isn't a sign there already. It's crazy.
It's not honest to be doing. It's where we can put things, because obviously it's working across partners.
There's no, you wouldn't have a clue. There's no indication. You know, you can't follow people.
Nothing. It's hopeless.
Well, 2 things. One is we understand through problems with rubbish that there are something like 52 Airbnbs in Sandwich. Now, those houses change frequently. A map or a little pack of maps in those houses, I don't know how that gets paid for, but for the people who have got those, for them to have a map available to anybody who calls in, because those people are the people in and around Sandwich. They might be the people who actually go into our local businesses a little bit more, as well as go and have a look at what Sandwich has to offer. So I don't know how that would get paid for, but if it could get paid for, it would be wonderful. And the other thing was with respect to car parks, we've asked on several occasions whether, I'm taking up the point that Christina has made, people could pay for their parking when they leave, not when they come, because they're constantly looking at their watches to say, oh gosh, I need to get back to the car, I need to put money in the car. And they, because of the way Sandwich is distributed, they don't see all of Sandwich because they're so worried about getting a fine.
The
So-
Canterbury car parks have that.
Yeah, I mean it's a tiny thing, but at least you know.
Claire and
going back to how things get paid, and this also goes back to something that Tony was saying earlier about getting things done, and just sort of, we're all different, coming from things different angles, and we're all coming from things from either professional individual businesses or as council or Dover District Council. The frustrating thing is that funding for something like this was so difficult for us because we weren't a known body, we were just 3 individual businesses coming together. We had to self-fund it. If there's any way that people, individuals or groups of people could come to Sandwich Town Council and say, look, we've got this idea, we're happy to produce it and do it, but can you assist us with funding? Can you put up the funding? Because I think there's a lot of people who've got lots of good ideas, would be very happy to do something, but not necessarily happy to pay for it. And if there's money available, and it's a good idea to work for the town, then surely that's what it's about.
That kind of brings me to the point of the Chamber of Commerce, because there was the point when it was being considered that Compass might take over the Chamber, but the Chamber do have money, and the Chamber should be paying for this kind of things. So I think we have to revisit where we are with the Chamber, because I absolutely agree with you that that's what the Chamber have got funding for, and this is where it should go.
But my point with that is, yes, that's fine, and there's definitely a place for Chamber of Commerce, and I think it would be a good idea. But there's also a place for individuals to come up with an idea that works, and to have assistance and have funding for it, without having to fit into this category of you've got to be this body, you've got to be part of that, you've got to be part of the committee. Why can't we just have ideas, put them up for discussion, if they work and someone's prepared to actually produce them or put them into action, but the money's required, can we just not have money? I mean, if we can't why does it have to be through the Chamber?
It's not as easy as that. You need to be a properly constituted.
You need a bank account. And getting a bank account is an extremely complicated business. There may be ways around. I mean, that's what's so disappointing. There are people with initiative all over this country who get, it's difficult because there are all sorts of regulatory hoops that they have to jump through. And I think we do have to be agile in response. And I agree that, but I don't think it would be responsible to the electorate for the council to put money into individuals' bank accounts. That's the problem.
We wouldn't have to necessarily work it that way. For example, this money could have gone straight to the printers. It could have gone straight to the artists.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting it goes
Yes,
to individuals.
I hear what you say. Absolutely.
I'm
Okay.
suggesting that if
Yes.
someone comes up with an idea and says, look, I'm happy to do
Yes.
this, I will produce it and I will do the work.
And send us the invoices.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sorry, we've got to go now, but we'll just say thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
been really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Thank you. Could I just ask if Chris could find out about, I helped to introduce the ANPR parking in Canterbury, and Dover said that they were going to trial ANPR.
What is ANPR?
As Automatic said, I was at the Medieval on Saturday. We had hoodening and animal guising, and we were packed out. The Medieval Centre had so many people, even poor old Jeff Franklin, the mayor, had to stand outside in the cold because it was so bad. But 3 of the people that was sat near me all got up and they all had to leave early, and they said exactly that. They said, our cars at 4 o'clock, we've got to go for our cars. Now, I was told by the parking manager of Canterbury City Council that Dover were going to trial ANPR and then roll it out to all the places, and that made things much better. It gets a better turnover of the cars as well. You don't have to worry about having change or Ringo phone things or anything like that. It's a brilliant system, and it worked really well in Sandwich. And people wouldn't be saying, I've got to go now. Oh, sorry, John, I can't buy you cards because my tickets coming up. So
Well, you need
could
the
we-
barriers, don't you? That's
Yeah.
That costs
Yeah.
money.
But perhaps could you find out if
Yeah, no,
that-
100%, and that might, yeah, that'd be worth just
it's
further
meant to be
discussion.
rolled out in Dover and Sandwich.
Yeah.
Canterbury is £3.20 an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't talk about
Because
costs.
I think Ringo you can, if you, but it's an app-based thing,
It
so you
is.
can go, oh, I need to extend my parking
Or
to
text you.
text you, and then you can do it. But you are right. If I'll have a chat with the team and I'll pick that
If
back
you
up.
could,
Of
thank
course I
you
can,
very
because I
much.
think I met you on when it was launched in
Did
Canterbury.
exactly. You did. That's right. Everyone's on it, I was there.
Okay, can we move on? We've got 10 minutes left, and there's a couple of 3 more items on the agenda, if that's okay. So the first thing is telephone boxes, signage, heritage boards. We've discussed that, and Chris says they're being, the latter two are being processed at the moment. The telephone boxes, you probably know the town council owns 2 of the historic red George, what are they called? Gilbert Scott phone boxes at the next to Ozzy's and one on New Street. So there is an idea about maybe they could be used as mini tourist offices with leaflets and so on, or maybe for a book exchange or a defibrillator or something. But the tourist thing is on the agenda, and I think Claire's committee is going to be looking at that.
Well, yes, I can put it on the agenda for Thursday, but
Yeah.
we're going to
Anyway.
be talking about what we want to put on
Yeah.
the agenda. So,
You know the one next to the sorting office. There's a phone box
Yeah,
there
we
next to
painted it.
John's shop. That Ron, one of the town team members, all he had was a tin of paint,
That's right.
and he
We
did
painted
it
it.
himself. Did a fantastic job. So you know there's a scope there for volunteers to do them
You
up.
have to be able to open it.
Yeah.
We don't know, but
There's 2 there.
Anyway, that's on the agenda. The next thing is tree trail. Nikki Warden, who's the voluntary tree warden in Sandwich, some of you might know, she's very keen on developing a tree trail in the town, because she does say there is a history in the town of kind of arboretum type planting with some very unusual species around the town wall, mill wall. Gaze and Salts has a number of interesting trees. So she's developing a leaflet that would guide people around the town, looking at, if you're into that kind of thing, looking at trees, it's another kind of, quiver, arrow in the quiver, if you like, of tourist information. It's another element to tourist information. So that's something that she is working on at the moment.
yes, one thing that I've thought about in the past and made inquiries as to how we might approach it is a blue plaque scheme.
Yeah.
And I have just had Christmas in Norwich, and what's very interesting in Norwich is that it's not simply a blue plaque scheme, X lived here from A to B, but it's also often a history of the building. So it will actually say, this building was originally an iron foundry and then became a blah blah, and now it's a house, a dwelling house. And that all adds to the pleasure of walking around that beautiful city, which incidentally has the most, as I'm sure you all know, wonderful market, which is permanent. But those are the sorts of things that I think we should start thinking about, because Sandwich has the most amazing buildings.
It is, and it's undiscovered. So a blue plaque scheme, it's certainly on our agenda.
Yes, but more than a blue plaque scheme.
Yeah, more
it would
than
be
that.
the buildings and the people.
I mean, there's the Kitchener Camp thing on the front of which Claire's written a book about. But we have Sydney Green Street, E.W. Swanton, various other people have stayed here. Queen Elizabeth stayed in the King's House.
Yeah.
The one I'm most interested in is Peter Derome, who lived on Short Street, who lived here for many years and was he's called the grandfather of gay erotic cinema.
You're longing to show these films, aren't you?
Did you see the request? Because someone wrote about this on Facebook about the blue plaque scheme, and I did go back and say we discussed it, and it was really complicated because you'd raised this.
It's not that complicated. It costs money, but good things do. But I do think we need to talk about it. And Yes, well,
But also the suggestion there was also that one of the walls in the cinema could actually have plaques with all the history of Sandwich,
Yeah.
the places to go and visit, the houses, and a little bit about what you were saying, a little bit of history about where to find it and what was there or who lived there.
I mean, it would require an individual or a body to lead on it because it is a complicated matter.
Yeah, it is.
You've got to commission the plaques, preferably in ceramic. You've got to get permission from the owner. Sometimes they might be reluctant. But my view is it probably adds to the value of a property to have an interesting plaque on a property. I mean, Ramsgate has plaques with, Karl Marx stayed here.
Yeah.
He came on holiday, that was it. Van Gogh was there for a couple of months.
Yeah.
Wilkie Collins. So it all adds to the charm and the interest of the town.
Absolutely.
We need to progress that. Any other business? I mean, we talked earlier about the Visitor Information Centre. I know that we haven't got all the evidence and the data and everything else, but is there a view about a general view at this stage about whether it should stay where it is or go somewhere else? Or
I don't think it should stay where it is. I think that's the most important thing. It shouldn't stay where it is.
It should go back to where it was.
If it can't go back to where it was because of the issues that have been raised with buses and weddings and so on, then the alternative would be a proper pop-up unit perhaps once the Guildhall Square is open. If you can't find another premises, I think, didn't we talk about the possibility of the second the age concerned shop that's next door to the sandwich shop?
Yeah.
I think Steve did mention that could have been turned into another restaurant that had half of it that was the visitors centre and half of it there. I mean, that would be a double whammy because it would be a nice thing to have on the Guildhall forecourt, and we'd have the visitors centre right bang in the middle of the Guildhall. But
I mean,
sorry, that's a person.
It doesn't have step-free access, but that's something that could be.
The question is, how many minutes a day is there a bus standing in front of the old visitor centre? Not very many, has to be the answer. Secondly, that unit presumably is part of the Guildhall and therefore does not accrue any rent. Right? So it's free. It's empty. It's empty. It's free. It's next to the courtroom, which is one of the spectacles of Sandwich. Yeah? It's the obvious place. It has to be used again.
I mean, that's my view, that if you go in there, there's a tourist office and the courtroom is in front of you, what an introduction to Sandwich. It's
exactly. And if you've got people who are working it, who are knowledgeable, like you are, you work in a museum, you're knowledgeable. I'm not suggesting you go in there, but we have people who are knowledgeable about the town and they could learn about the courtroom if they don't already know. It's a perfect place, and it's right opposite the new cafe, marketplace place. It couldn't be a better place, and it costs nothing. It's empty, and it belongs to the Guildhall.
Yeah.
So please push it.
Okay,
councillors.
Thanks for your view.
Just a little bit of information about the Age Concern shop. That is tightly leased to Age Concern. Yes.
I know who owns it.
Yes.
Little testifies to this. The people are fascinated by the courtroom, aren't they?
Yeah.
When they come and visit the museum,
they
they're fascinated by the courtroom.
But I think one of the reasons why we want people to come through our museum into the courtroom, because you need the footfall of the people going through the museum for the museum accreditation. And if you lose your accreditation, you then lose the museum. So it's vital that you have this linkage through. And the other way won't work. So we need people through the museum as well. And that was actually the driver for the Heritage Lottery bid and for the first vision of Sandwich. So there's a lot more to consider than just, oh, it would be lovely there. I would also like to see us make more of it for TV, film, etc. occasions. And again, that courtroom could be, I'd like someone to write a really good book about medieval court hearings in Sandwich. And it could be filmed there, and that would be a really good earner to keep the Guildhall going. There's so much opportunity, and if you keep the visitor information there, you might be blocking up that opportunity. And there are other things you can do for visitor information.
Can I just ask why it won't work the other way? So if you went in to the Visitor Information Centre where it used to be, you were then escorted through the courtroom, why can't you go the other way into the museum? And then that keeps the museum numbers up.
Simple solution. You open the TIC up where it was.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That's
have
what
a
I'm saying.
sign instructing people to access the courtroom via the museum.
Via the museum.
Job done.
And the whole thing is combined,
The
then?
exhibition
Yeah.
space that was closed to point.
I don't know why they
So-
changed it.
So that's an option on the table, but as I say, we'll get the data, the evidence, and what this working group will do is present a report to the council with recommendations probably in March, hopefully in time for something to be implemented before the new season starts.
I just want to ask what a pop-up is, because a pop-up indicates it can pop down as well. And I'm just worried that it's something that would blow over. So I just want to, I mean, we're talking permanence in some sense,
I
aren't
think
we?
a pop-up means a kind of kiosk like they have in Broadstairs, which is it's
No,
actually,
that's a pop-up.
it's more than a pop-up,
It's
isn't it?
a structure.
It's a structure, yeah.
Garage.
I mean, I don't think we should, a shed is not
No,
appropriate.
but something attractive, a bandstand shape or something, a bit of wrought iron.
Yeah.
It's probably a very quick answer to this, but what about, and as in probably being no, what's the details of that opposite the entrance to the Guildhall, that empty space? I know it's used for voting, but and sometimes
Well, that's
for
going
rug
to the
sales,
archive. That's where the archives are.
We're working to do that. It should be happening soon.
And the 170 still. Okay, one, Christina, and then I'll try and wrap up.
Yeah. A couple of things were mentioned. One of them was the Chamber of Commerce. Now, looking through the records of Sandwich Town Council and the budgets in particular, it actually states that there is no Sandwich Chamber of Commerce. And yet I've seen in social media one of the old members, the DDC councillor, has suggested that the Chamber of Commerce has resurrected. I don't know what else to say. And that also it has initiated some form of tourism initiative. But there's no connection, and I'm wondering how we can connect this group with, or how we can draw whatever input that they're gathering, because I don't know what's happening, but it's almost as though another group has been created to operate in parallel.
I don't wish to comment on that.
No.
All I know is that the officers resigned back in March time.
And
the new
officially,
group were going to take over, but negotiations haven't got anywhere. I mean, all I'll say is we do need a representative voice for business in the town. Forget the Discovery Park, but the town itself needs a strong voice.
Yeah,
for DDC, for STC, for
Indeed.
Deal and Woolmer Chamber of Trade.
Yeah.
And the STC records actually state there is no Chamber of Commerce for Sandwich. It actually says that. I've seen it. So I'm not sure what's happening, but it may be diluting some of the information collection. I don't know.
So we should ask them to tell us what's happening, and also when Compass was starting, quite a bit of work went into seeing if Compass could take over the bank account, access the money. And I was told that that could happen, that somehow it's fallen by the wayside. So I think that should be resurrected as well, because
the situation very briefly was that we did have a meeting with the mayor at the time, and it was agreed that we would be able to set up the Chamber of Commerce. We provided the paperwork that they requested at the time. And it was supposed to be going through, it wasn't a problem, the money was going to be transferred, we would be able to set up a bank account. That didn't happen.
we need to.
And, well, no, it actually became apparent to the three of us as independent businesses that actually we weren't going to get anywhere without an awful lot of headaches by going down that route, which is why we set up the Sandwich Town Compass, so that we were independent of anybody. We weren't being held, we obviously were held to account as individuals, but no, we weren't having to jump through hoops. There was no one able to pull at our strings, and so that's how we came about as an independent body that's interested in business and bringing more business into the town. But obviously setting up a
that money sitting there should still be used for a project like yours is what I think.
totally agree, but what can one do? If you presented what was required of you and then still nothing came of it, then
well, hang on, it's not strictly true, is it, Claire? Because
no, it is completely
I set up, I proposed, and it was agreed, to set up a meeting with the ex-mayor and councillor friend, and it struck me that had an invoice been produced for whatever printing you wanted done, I could have got the other money. Now, I appreciate you haven't got a bank account, but as you quite rightly said, we could have paid the printer, or you could have paid the printer direct from the Chamber of Commerce, who do have that money. They do have money, as you know. So we can still do that, but you have to produce an invoice of some sort. If you get an invoice from the printer, I am quite sure we could get the money from the Chamber of Commerce, or at least they call them open sandwich, they call them so. Yeah, so, we could get that. But you guys, to be fair, dug your heels in, you didn't want anything to do with it. I was prepared
Okay, let's...
No, can I say, what we wanted to do is we actually wanted to keep it independent.
Well, that's fine, but then you can't complain that you're not getting any money.
I'm not complaining. Do I complain I'm not getting any money?
Okay, let's...
Well, I'm offering.
Can you carry that on outside the room, I think, Claire?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question because I don't understand this. The Chamber of Commerce presumably is a membership organisation, and presumably as members, members have the right to elect the committee that runs it, including the chair and the secretary and whatever. And what I can't understand, and I'm sure you can clarify it for me, is why is whether, if you joined the Chamber of Commerce as members, would that not give you voting rights so you could elect, because evidently the leadership has resigned, a new committee which would immediately give you access to bank accounts and all the other bits and pieces that go with a formal organisation? So I don't understand why that can't be a way through this.
If you wish to set up a Chamber of Commerce and you wish to be part of a Chamber of Commerce, and of course that's the way it can operate.
But you don't want to be part of a Chamber of Commerce?
We made the decision that that was not for us. It's not to say that it's not the way for anyone, but it just wasn't the way for us.
Well, the last meeting, we had the meeting of this committee, there was no appetite for a Chamber of Commerce, if you remember.
Well, it wasn't this committee.
No,
it was
it was a business meeting.
Okay, let's
it was a business meeting.
Can we wrap up, because we said we'd try and finish at 7 minutes.
I just wanted to finish, Chris, from DDC's perspective, that I don't know if approaches are being made to you through the alternative route. I don't know. This is why I raised it, because I don't know what DDC are seeing and whether in actual fact that picture might be confused by what's going on elsewhere.
In terms of the chambers?
Yeah, well, so, and in terms of Sandwich tourism and in terms of the chambers, the whole picture might be a bit confused.
I think this is why I was really excited about coming in, hearing this. So
that's good.
We can kickstart it all working together. I mean, in terms of working with the chambers, so Dover District has a Chamber of Commerce. They're also the East Kent Chamber. We work closely with them, so that's David Foley. Deal and Woolmer Chamber of Trade we work closely with, so I attend 1 and 2 probably of their meetings. They happen at the Royal Hotel, as you will know, in Deal. And I think we need those groups and the voices so we can be hearing these things. So I've taken pages of notes from this meeting, but it's really important because that's how we can work together. So I can go back, I can speak to the teams, I can speak about ANPR with the parking team. It's all those type of things which is really important. So having a group together, whatever guys that group takes is is really
Brilliant.
important to drive
That's
change.
Okay, I'll try and wrap up now. Are there any other urgent items of business?
And just one last thing to help you wrap up. I wanted to thank Tony Brun for hosting us tonight.
Thank you,
And I
Tony.
wanted to thank Chris for taking his time to be here and, you know, from working hours to be here and help us. So thank you very
That's
much.
right, and I'm happy to come to other meetings. I said earlier, but I'll say, when the aqua park you spoke about, don't forget you've got Wing and Wildlife Park as
Yeah,
well.
I've got that.
With 500,000 visitors a year. Quite a good
I mean, there's just a couple of kind of action points I've got, which is first that we need a strategy and a plan, and STC and the town team together need to lead on that. So that's something I can discuss with Claire. The other idea I had, it's the dreaded walkabout word. But rather than talking in an abstract way, would it make sense for this group and anyone who wants to come along to do a walkabout in the town? So, you know, from the station, sort of following the tourist trail, if you like, and seeing what needs to be done. And then at least we can make a list of kind of...
Either myself or one of my team will join me on that.
So that's something we could consider.
I already do a Jewish walkabout in Sandwich, which is rather important.
Okay. Perfect.
I mean, medieval, yes, but also 20th century,
Yeah.
very important.
Well,
And there's the pub stall as well. The old pub
yeah,
stall,
Nikki,
which is very good
Nikki
as well,
Woody,
I'm told.
does that. So there's all these things that kind of fit together, isn't there? I'll do.
Society tour's a good one. I think
Yeah.
we were
The history.
because we got the different town councils. We pre-COVID, so we had Deal Town Council, Dover Towns Council, and then officers joined me in Sandwich. Society took us on a great tour to get that understanding across the towns as well. So that's something we want to
Great,
do.
and just to mention, Richborough Roman Fort reopens on the 1st of April.
Fantastic.
English Heritage will, and their new visitor centre and the Gateway, which you may have.
It's amazing.
It is.
It's
So put
amazing.
that date in your diary. It's April, and it should have opened last July, but it is one of the great draws, or should be. And I think, you know, I mean, I've just said it before, but it would be something which, when you talk to people in Sandwich and say Richborough Fort, they say, where's that?
Exactly. It's extraordinary.
And the other thing for a local tour is all the stones that came from there in the town.
The town is.
Well, St Mary's, it's built from
It
Richborough.
is almost all.
Final thing, I'll do notes of this meeting and send them out to everyone. I think I've got everyone's contact details in my notes here. And yeah, thank you all for coming. It's been hopefully you found it a useful, constructive, informative meeting. And let's keep going.
Yeah.
Thank you.